Hello and welcome to the webinar. We are ready to begin our program, so let's get started. I would like to introduce your host and presenter for today's event, Dave Kyle.
Hello and welcome to the webinar. Our program today is Keeping Your Business Secure Online. I'd like to get us started. I'd like to introduce to you Matt Schmidt, who's joining with me. Hey Matt, how are you?
Good, Dave. How are you?
Doing great. We're with Ease Technologies. We've been providing IT support services and consulting services to a wide range of customers for well over 25 years. If during the webinar you have any questions, I'll check my email or the chat area as mentioned. My email address is there. Just a little background about Ease Technologies. We were founded in 1993 here in the Mid-Atlantic region. We provide IT support services and secure cloud solutions. You can find us at www.easetech.com or give us a call at Ease 911 on the 800 number. So let's get started. And our agenda today is keeping your business secure online, but one of the things that we want to do is make sure we're covering some of the current cyber threats that are going on out there, specifically identifying some of the aspects that are called social engineering techniques that are being used, targeting you mostly through phishing emails, and then also most importantly providing you some ways to mitigate your risk, and then answering any questions you may have. So Matt, you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
All right, how about do me a favor if you can help a little bit covering some of the data breach. This is actually a document from Verizon they provide annually about some of the background information of what's going on. So share a little bit with us here on some of this.
Yeah, this is a really good report, and if you get a chance, people can download this and take a look at it. But what's fascinating is 58% of victims were small businesses. 94% of malware comes from emails, and we can certainly attest to that for what we've seen with our own customers. 28%, this is a little disturbing, so almost a third involve internal actors, so someone within the organization itself. And 68% took months to uncover. We actually had an incident recently with a customer that someone was lying in wait for probably a month collecting information before they actually sprang into action and tried to, get money or use a credit card, things like that. So the sooner you can discover these things, the better. But this is a report that Verizon puts out every year, and it is really full of good information.
Yeah, the internal actor aspect of this is most often associated with somebody who's worked at the company. I'll just generalize. Maybe they work in an department, they have access to certain database or information or access to things, and before they leave, they download information and then leave the company and take it with them. So that's considered a breach.
Right.
And so that's where that 28% typically comes into. And for most cases, that's where forensics gets involved from a computer standpoint to investigate. We think something happened, we don't know what it was, so we bring a forensics expert in to kind of identify what's happening. So that's how typically an internal situation occurs. Matt, this is one of our constantly dynamic changing slides for every 6 months when we do this program. And you want to share a little bit about this one for us?
Yeah, maybe someday we'll animate this so it changes over the years. But yeah, this is some of the large organization breaches that have happened fairly recently. So one of the large, most recent ones were the city of Atlanta, and they were down to the point where they were having to do everything by paper. And you get to the point sometimes where people don't remember how to do things manually by paper. Equifax was another major breach. I feel like every time I'll click on another news story on Equifax, it goes up by tens of millions of people that have had their information compromised. So these are some of the large ones, but the large organizations are not the only ones that are targeted.
Yeah, most of the larger ones are where personal identifiable information is stolen. And you'd seen that with Equifax or with Uber or with MedStar Health. The Atlanta one was a situation of ransomware. Wasn't that correct?
Yeah.
So, and we'll cover some of these. We're not going to focus too much on personal data breaches in the sense of where personal information is stolen in that typical way, like a credit card or something like that. We're going to talk about it that relates to taxes and things like that, but more some of the techniques that are associated with some of the smaller businesses, which here's a list of some of those for us, as a matter of fact, too. And these change as well. They're not as most easily recognized because they're smaller of size, but they have similar situations. A lot of them are affected by ransomware or other types of heists that cost them money in some way. And for some of these, for example, the North Central Technical College, they actually had to shut the college down for registration this last spring, and couldn't take new students for a while until they get it all sorted out. So these really kind of not only a financial impact on the obvious part of a ransomware situation, but also major disruptions in business.
Yeah, and I think this ultimately demonstrates that it's not just the big players that these people are going after. They'll go after any size organization to gather the information that they're looking for or to try to get money.
Yep, and that's the message we want to share with all of you listening today. And also, I know a lot of you are advisors for companies you work with as well, or have the ear of the people involved with other organizations. So, understanding that it's not just the big players, it is all of us that are affected by these things. So let's just cover a few terms. Want to describe what malware is, Matt?
Sure. Malware is kind of the broad umbrella term that is used to basically describe any malicious software or program that's put on your computer. So there's going to be a lot of categories that fall under this umbrella of malware, but that you're going to hear malware quite a bit these days. A virus is a specific type of malware code that is designed to replicate itself once it's activated on a device. So once it's clicked on or launched, it starts replicating itself and spreading just like a real virus. A keylogger is a specific malware that's put on a computer or a desktop, laptop that's used to record users' keystrokes. So in this case, they're looking for passwords, they're looking for social security numbers, credit card numbers, anything like that. Over time.
End up finding here on some of these things is they make packages of pieces of malware that do certain tasks or activities and combine them to do certain things together. Sometimes it's by themselves, sometimes it's together, but it's really a package of code that comes at you.
Malicious workflow.
Yeah.
Phishing is a specific type of activity that's designed to get information, usually by masquerading as somebody a trustworthy entity. So somebody you work with, family member, somebody you deal with on a professional basis, just trying to get information, pretending to be somebody else. And then spear phishing is a specific type of phishing where it's a targeted attack. So you're trying to masquerade again as that trustworthy entity, but you're trying to get to someone specifically. So phishing, everybody is familiar with the old emails that used to come from the Nigerian prince looking for money. That would have been sent to a million people hoping that 10 click on it and take action. Spear phishing is much more targeted. They know exactly who they're going after, and they're trying to do concentric circles to get to that individual or company.
Let's discuss and talk some of these different types of online compromises. I mentioned the one already, which was personal information. And those are a little more of the larger and broader things that you see in the news media. So anything from a Target, retail, where they steal their credit cards, this thing with Equifax, where they get personal information there. So they're typically, when they're trying to do something like that, in most cases, they're looking to get tens of thousands, if not millions of pieces of information, and then they're resold online. Another one, and actually very, very prevalent, is intellectual property. And this would be everything from one company attacking another company to find information of how they might do a process, or a nation state going after a big company, which they have serious problems with right now, where people, businesses are being compromised with everything from how something's manufactured to intellectual property of how a game's being made. And these happen all over the place. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on intellectual property. The same mechanisms are there with spear phishing that we'll talk about, but not going to focus on it too much because it's more of a larger institutional issue than a smaller, medium-sized business one. We're going to talk about ransomware. Pretty prevalent, been a real problem for the last 4 to 5 years. And this is where your computer's basically compromised to the point where you can't use it. And we'll explain what happens and how you can get past it. Wire transfer heist. This is another technique that's been out for about the last 3 or 4 years where money is being sent unintentionally to someone you think is a good person, but you've been compromised in a way that you don't understand that you've been socially engineered or hacked. And finally, a newer one is called cryptojacking. And we'll get into that a little bit. It has to do with Bitcoin and your computers being hijacked to create financial opportunity for someone else, basically. So we'll cover most all of these, the ones that are most prevalent, most you're likely to encounter in your business. So Matt, how about I share with everybody a little bit of current security and things they're probably already using or already assume that it's keeping us protected.
Or should be using. Yeah, so this is the baseline protection. So you've got your firewall, which is what stands between your organization and the internet. You've got the antivirus protection that you have running on your desktops and laptops, whether that be, Symantec, McAfee, WebRoot, or any of those other ones. Spam filters. So hopefully you're using a spam filtering service to try to cut down on the junk emails. There's a lot more tools available on that front. And then good patch management, making sure your systems and your devices are up to date. This is the baseline of everyone should be doing. So if you're not doing that today, you need to at least start there and then build on it from that, because given where we are today, this isn't enough. This is the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening is all these bare minimums we have in place, which are appropriate, we end up falling in the new category, which is all the great technology we have. The new situation is that cyber thieves and what we run into with them is they're using techniques, basically we're calling social engineering. It's basically a con, and they do it either digitally or in some cases we'll share with you through phone calls or combinations of phone calls and emails to trick you into divulging information or sharing information that helps them get to what they want to get to. So basically, social engineering is the psychological manipulation of people in performing actions or divulging confidential information. And again, it's been done for years. You ever hear of the word con man? That's been around since the early 1800s. And that's basically what these people are doing. They're tricking you into something that you have that's important, that gives them access or information that they want to use in a way that's nefarious. So let's just give a quick example. We have a little bit of a video here of kind of how it's done. And this is a little bit of a combination of technology and phone, but the important part is how easily it's accomplished.
What do you think of when I say the word hacker? Some creepy dude in a basement? Well, that's a misconception. What if I told you there's a class of hackers who don't just have social skills, they have more social intelligence than anyone you'll ever meet? David Kennedy is one of them. He's what's known as a social engineer, or a people hacker. His craft is to dupe you into doing things and sharing information you probably shouldn't.
Can I just get your credit card number?
Some use it for illegal activity. In David's case, companies pay him to find out if employees are leaving the company vulnerable. He and his team show us how it's done. Step 1, spoof his number so it looks like he's calling from inside the company, and then call tech support.
Hello, you there? Hello?
Hi, this is Ken. How may I help you?
I was wondering if you can take a look at a website I'm trying to get to. It's for a big customer thing I'm working on for Monday, and I can't seem to get to the website from my computer.
Sure. What's the website? I'll see if I can get to it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate the help. I mean, it could be a stupid thing. I'm really stuck with computers, but so it's www.survey. That's SURVEY -pro.com.
Yeah, I got that prompt to open. I just clicked open and I'm at the site now.
Here's what the IT guy doesn't realize. By clicking that link, he's just given David full access to his computer.
Whoa, okay, that's weird. I just hit it and it works. It seems like it's working fine now. Awesome. I don't know what you did, man, but I really appreciate the help.
Hey, no problem. That was easy.
That was it?
We're on this computer right now.
You were able to take over this guy's computer within, I would say, like under 2 minutes.
Under 2 minutes, yeah. Under 2 minutes, took over his entire computer. And think of it as not just his computer, but it's pretty much a downfall of the entire company.
Yeah, so not a fun scenario to see, but one that actually happens quite readily. And in this case, it probably was more along the lines of a spear phishing situation where someone wants to get to this company, get the information. So again, they're using social engineering techniques. And you can go on YouTube or a number of spots and see all these things that are going out there, that people using emails and phone calls and combinations of things to trick people into providing them information or getting access that they otherwise wouldn't have done or shouldn't be doing. So let's talk about some of these, what we call mechanisms for this social engineering. The first one is email, which we'll spend quite a bit of time on because that's really what the essence of 94% of all these tactics and tricks are being done for the vast majority. Phone calls are right behind it, and we showed you some examples already. And then thumb drives and dumpster drives are also part of the mix. And when we say dumpster drive, Matt, what is a dumpster dive?
Yeah, they're literally going through your trash. They're looking for anything that they can identify themselves as you. So bank account numbers, full name and address. I mean, any little tidbit that they can get on paper, they're going to take and get back. So
yeah, that's what we
read all that properly.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest, and we're not suggesting that people are waiting for you to throw your trash out and they're going through it all, and at the moment it happens. But it's just and we'll describe some steps to take, but it's just good common sense going forward. Is personal information of any type, work or business, should be disposed of in a proper manner, which we'll talk about.
Exactly.
So let's talk about this one that we enjoy. This is really the Stuxnet virus is what it's called. It goes way back in time. And Matt, I know that it's kind of an interesting one because it plays off the whole social engineering thing, but it goes back 11 years ago. Want to share with that?
Yeah, it's kind of like a historical incident now. But in 2007, the U.S. and Israel's worked together to create this Stuxnet virus, which was used to attack Iran's nuclear program. So it was put on thumb drives, and then the thumb drives were dropped around the parking lot outside the nuclear facility because the nuclear facility was not online. There was no way to get to it externally. They had to get to it internally in order to put the virus on the systems. So they waited, and somebody found a thumb drive in the parking lot and said, oh, I wonder what's on here, put it into the computer. And once it was in the computer, just like that, it was launched and created what was known at the time as the first physical attack. So it was designed to make the centrifuges run, 1,000 times faster than they were designed to and break. And by doing that, they actually put the Iranian nuclear program back about 10 years. So that all sounds great, but the problem was the postscript to this is now that virus was out in the wild, in the public, so that other people could take that virus and then manipulate it, change it. I forget how many variants there are of this, but it's probably in the hundreds at this point. And it's being used for far more nefarious things. I think, Dave, you had mentioned to me someone had used it to attack a German steel mill company or something like that. So there's always a downside, no matter how good it sounds.
Yeah. The interesting part of the social engineering part is that they had thumb drives they targeted people with. And
the human curiosity is just overwhelming. We had a client that had found a thumb drive, and I explained to them how serious it was that something malicious could be on that. And as soon as I was done that lengthy explanation, they said, "So I should see what's on here, right?" And I was like, "No, you should not. You should just dispose of it."
University of Maryland did a study a couple of years ago, and it was something greater than 50% of all thumb drives that were dropped out in this study were shown to have been inserted into a computer to see what was on them.
I believe it. It's hard to resist.
Yeah. It's a great technique to kind of go, all right, let me install a virus, and you have a 50% chance someone's going to pick it up and put it in their computer.
Some pretty good odds.
Yeah. So let's talk about a few other things that we end up seeing pretty regularly, and some of these are these emails. And this is one I've gotten, and I've seen more of these in the last 8, 9, 10 months than anything else that comes my way. And that's just a very simple one, looking like it's coming from Microsoft. And I think I even may have almost gotten fooled by this one in a sense that it looks very official, and it's a typical kind of scenario where they're going to put a lot of official information. They're going to put, in some cases, may even have a lot of correct information. But the trick is having to look at what's going on there. The email address where this is coming from is not from Microsoft. It's coming from some other organization I'm not familiar with at all. There's, of course, a sense of urgency in it, which is something you'll see repeatedly in this. This sense of urgency part of it's going to make you want to stop what you're doing and quickly click on something in the emails when it comes down to it. And then in this case, there is a link, which is where the problems begin. So again, you're going to see tells that something that's not correct. You're going to have a sense of urgency, and then of course a link or an attachment that's going to infect you with some sort of malware. Here's another one. Again, this is a little bit older, but still relevant. In this one, for example, it's AT&T voicemail. I don't have AT&T voicemail. It came to an email address that I wouldn't have gotten this anyway. And then also, why would 5 people get an email address or an attachment about a voicemail? It doesn't make any sense. Further into it, of course, there's an attachment with some malware probably involved with it. So again, the attachment factors are there. This particular email came to me in 2014. It was 2013 at the time, so the date was wrong. The missing information, so you just scan through the email. It says, it's contact AT&T support. We're available 24/7, and there's no phone number. So again, you're looking at these kind of emails, and you're going to find consistently some issues with them. Some of them are getting a lot better over time, but there's always a little tell somewhere along the way. Here's another one that came out a few years ago for me. It actually went to someone in the company, but there was an attachment to it. So again, flag goes off for me. I thought it was particularly good because it created a sense of urgency. It was probably designed for someone in the financial department. Came in at 5 o'clock on October 30th. So someone's probably getting ready to walk out the door. They see this email come in, and it says, we need to do something right away before 10 o'clock tomorrow. The natural reaction for someone is, well, let me just take a look at it before I go. Well, that's not the thing to do here, because that zip file that's across there, that attachment would have been malware that somebody would have clicked on and installed in their computer. So again, creating that sense of urgency was a problem. For me, looking at this further, I could see the area codes had nothing to do with anything we're involved with. We don't do banking with Bank of America either. So, there's tells in all these things, but again, the timing of it was pretty clever, and the communication on it was just as clever to kind of have someone just, let me check it out before I go to work. This one has come in a little more recently to me. Again, pretty typical though. Bank of America, any kind of financial institution, they're going to try to share with you that they need to have new information. Important notice regarding your account. This particular one's missing the T in the word account, but that was another tell. So for this particular situation, I did click on this email, and there's some other sense of urgency, of course, incomplete address, and then the link. Again, all tells me this is a problem. So part 2 is clicking on it. And as you click on it, again, looks very accurate. And what they're trying to have you do here is type your account email number, email address, or your account information and your passcode. And the real tell, though, is by looking at the URL of the website. It has nothing to do with Bank of America. 9x99 alerts is something you should be, very wary of, and has nothing to do with Bank of America. So if you've taken that step to click on something, which you shouldn't do, and you still need to be very mindful and pay attention to what you're clicking on to see where it's taking you to. Basically, it's just a spoofed email with a spoofed website to get your information. So here's a few things, and Matt, maybe you can help me out a little bit on, is it fishy? What is it that you need to look for in an email to pay attention to and be wary of when you get emails that, you
Right.
expect is a problem?
Right. So you want to look at the sender of the email. You want to make sure that it is someone you know, and that the email address that's behind the name actually makes sense to you. It is, coming from your organization, or it's a personal one that you actually know. Is there a sense of urgency in the subject line or email body? A lot of times you want to take a step back. You want to make a phone call. You want to verify before you take action on those. Is the email sent to the correct email address? If you're looking at something that says undisclosed recipients, or there's a group of people on there, and that doesn't make sense, someone else may be compromised and their contact list may be compromised, which is why you're getting this. So check that. Are there any attachments or links? So a couple of the examples Dave just showed, the zip files, those are compressed files. I'm always wary of those. I'm wary of those even when I know they're coming from someone I know. So if they're not expected and you see something that's a compressed file, don't open it. Just don't open it. Call the person, find out what they're actually sending you. Chances are pretty good that it's probably not legit.
Yeah, you probably more than likely expect and understand, that somebody be sending you something, as opposed to getting a document or something from Dropbox or somewhere out of the blue to click on something. That's probably the link or the document that you kind of go, I didn't expect that from Steve.
Exactly.
And here it comes in. Well, don't expect it from Steve, and be wary of it.
Right. Does the email request personal information? Don't just give personal information through email. Are there spelling or grammatical errors in email? Does it not look right? Does it not feel right? And have you checked the link? If there's a link in there, if you just take the mouse and hover over that link, it will show you the URL for that. Oh, a great example here in the Wells Fargo. So you'll see that, as I hover over that link, it says greetlanka.com/secure. Well, that has nothing to do with Wells Fargo. So I'm not going to click on that link. And ultimately, you want to trust your instinct. Trust your gut. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Most banks are not going to email you asking for personal information through email. They know that people are trying to do this by now, so they're not going to do it legitimately.
Same thing with the IRS, and
Exactly.
advising your clients about not responding to any IRS documents that are asking for personal information as well.
Right.
So let's cover a very specific part of all this. One of these is ransomware. And ransomware, Matt, you want to cover this a little bit for us? You've brought this a few times.
Yeah, so this began around 2012, where people would click on something, typically a link or an email, would have an attachment with malware. Once that malware is activated, it basically launches and encrypts the hard drive, which means it basically takes all the information on the hard drive and puts it in a state that is unreadable to your computer. And you get a screen, some either like this or something like this. There's now over 240 different ransomware variations that basically says, hey, your computer has been hijacked, essentially, and here's what you need to do. You need to pay us a certain amount of money, usually through Bitcoin, to get your data back. The FBI recommends that you don't pay that. We recommend that you don't pay that. There's no guarantee that paying will get your computer back. What really needs to happen is you need to have a good backup and disaster recovery plan so that you can restore back to before that ransomware was in place. Sometimes they do lie in wait, meaning the malware is launched maybe a week before you see this and you get that screen. So you want to make sure that you go back to before that happened.
Okay. Another one, wire transfer heist, and this is one that's done in combination with the phone call scenario. How this is often done is called CEO fraud because it's an executive impersonation. Probably even heard about this one in the news. It's typically targeting small, mid-sized accounts, usually going after about $30,000 to $40,000, $50,000 of a heist. What they typically do is they're going to target the finance department. An email is going to go out from, let's say, the CEO or the president. It's going to go to the finance department saying, hey, look, you can expect a phone call from our corporate counsel or some other person of authority in the next 20 minutes. Please let me know that you got this email. The details about this wire transfer are enclosed for you. Please don't do anything until you get a phone call from our corporate counsel to act on this as a security step. So they're saying and doing all the right things, but the reality is it's spear phishing with you. And the phone call comes in, and sure enough, it's Steve, the corporate counsel, and he's saying, look, I just want to authorize the email you got. Did you get that? And they'll say, yes, you did. And boom, they send the money out. And of course, it's always a sense of urgency that needs to take place just that day. And sure enough, $30,000 or $40,000 goes out to some bank across the water that no one can get back again. And this has happened in multiple situations to the point where it's in the billions of dollars every year across the country. And in some cases, fortunately, some organizations have been doing it for many, many months and continued to do it thinking it was a proper set of steps to take place, that they should have been doing it monthly.
Yeah.
So
we see this every week with someone. And I think, even small organizations have this. It's easier to deal with, I think, with small organizations. If you're a large company, maybe you don't know the person that's calling, but you need to put some policies in place where the person getting the email asking for, something with a sense of urgency calls, who they think should be called, and not the other way around.
Yeah. Another variation of this one. Here's just a quick example of me getting an email just like this. So this is an email from my business partner, Chuck Bubeck. Email address looks legit. Sense of urgency at your desk. You need to do a wire transfer today. Same kind of thing. Now, the only thing, two things about this helped me. One is Chuck wouldn't have sent me an email at 9 o'clock at night for something like this. And two, the Outlook program I use for email did kind of pick this up and does identify this as potential fraud, and you might need to check into this a little bit further. So there was a little help on this one from the email program itself. But it's the same kind of stuff that ends up being sent out there because they can spoof an email. So again, Chuck didn't send it. His email wasn't compromised. They simply spoofed it. And
so the to field is also blank, which is another tell.
Yep. So again, all these little tells are typically in there in some kind. The email looks good, but spoofed, time of the email, and then again, missing the address, as Matt mentioned. So here's another one, very, 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 very similar to this. This came out in 2017, mainly focused around tax preparers, and it's called a W-2 phishing scam. Same similar setup, executive impersonation, calling either the HR department or the finance department, looking to get W-2 information from their company. So basically the same kind of thing. Hey, look, we'd like to have all the W-2 information from all our employees. You'll get a phone call. Can you email it over to me? And basically what they're trying to do is, and those of you who are tax preparers are very familiar with this situation. They're getting everything they need to do just to file an early tax preparation on somebody and, compromise an IRS situation prior to somebody else putting in their own filing. So it's a pretty serious problem. Didn't see it quite as much in 2018 this last year, but it's still out there, and just the techniques they're using of executive impersonation with emails and looking for personal identifiable information they can use, in this case for IRS. So it was pretty common, and it happened quite a bit, as a matter of fact. So again, just be wary. Education is the most important part of this, because it's emails and phone calls are in combination that are making this happen. And they were, the other thing here is lower profile targets. They weren't always going for big names. They were going for places they could get 30 or 40, 50 W-2s at one clip and using that. Cryptojacking. You want to help out and explain this one to us, Matt?
Yeah, so this is probably the newest thing, at least that I'm aware of. This is malware that basically puts a computer program on your server. Typically, sometimes it could be on a desktop or something that is running continuously in your organization, and it basically sits there and mines for cryptocurrency. So, looking for Bitcoin, other types of cryptocurrency. There's no real warning that there's an infection going on. I don't know that the AV picks up on this yet, but it can cause, slowdown of your servers, slowdown of your computer, because this is running in the background, basically trying to collect money.
Yeah, it's another article just came out on this one yesterday. It's still really, really prevalent only because it's not being identified either by the antivirus software, or people just don't even notice their computer slowing down enough to realize it. But again, it's typically not doing any serious harm. It's not taking personal information, but it's utilizing resources off your computer in a back-end kind of way to get what it wants out of your resources, essentially. So let's talk about some important steps to keep yourself protected and reducing some of your risk. Education programs like this are really critical. So if you're in the tax preparing business or have staff that comes in as contractors from time to time, make sure you take the time to educate them on these kind of things. I know many of you are aware to do that, but don't overlook it. A lot of people aren't as savvy in some of these things, and some of this stuff changes pretty regularly. So a good educational program is really, really important for anybody coming on board to your company. Disaster recovery plan is really critical. Sometimes, as we mentioned, the ransomware situation, the only way to get past this problem is to have a good disaster recovery where you can go to an older backup and get past the issue when the malware was installed. And a good disaster recovery plan is fantastic for any reason, though. I mean, you could have water damage in your building, fire, floods, all kind of other issues. So it ties together in a very important way, not just for reducing your risk on malware. Keeping your devices updated, we kind of were talking about that early on. The software nowadays, when you do get updates, whether it be for your phones, or for your iPads, tablets, or computers, half of it's not even new features. Quite frankly, it's software updates that are being provided to you to keep yourself protected. So don't overlook those updates, and certainly take prudent steps when to install it, but don't just blow it off for a long time, because there are a lot of good security updates to help keep you protected inside those, along with a few features. We often talk about, for some organizations, using a dedicated banking computer with no email to it. So if you're using that as your transactional system, just keep it aside. Don't make it something that's somebody else could get to, and eliminate your risk with email from that particular unit. Keeping good wire transfer policies in place. What is it that you need to do to make sure a wire transfer policy happens? Do you have it set up with your bank? Are they involved with you? So all the steps and procedures can happen properly, so you can't be compromised with some of the things we've shared with you today. Securing your devices. Obviously, there are always situations where someone could leave a computer or a laptop or a phone. So a couple ways you secure a device. Always make sure you have encryption turned on your device, which is often an option. It's in the settings, where it encrypts the hard drive based on your password that you know. And then secondly, part of that is locking your system down. So after a couple minutes, if it's your iPhone, but maybe 10, 15 minutes if it's your desktop computer or laptop, will automatically lock up. And the only way you can get back into it is with your password being used and something like that. Seems like a lot of steps, but these are the kind of things that we hear pretty regularly about a laptop that may have either gotten stolen or left somewhere. And unfortunately, someone left, hundreds of thousands of personal identifiable information of other people on there, and it's compromised at that point. Cloud solutions, big fan favorite of ours. A lot of the things that we are sharing with you today of reducing your risk are incorporated in here. Great disaster recovery and cloud solutions, great security built in. If your device using a cloud solution gets compromised, your device doesn't have retain that information. It's in the cloud still. So with good password policies, no one can get that information but you. So we're really in big support of a way to mitigate your problems with malware and virus attacks is with cloud solutions. Because again, we're able to provide solutions that are probably better and more secure through updates and other activities than you can do for yourself. And I'll talk about insurance in 1 second. We have another slide for that one, but that's another consideration nowadays for a lot of folks, as well as password policies, which we'll get into as well, because that's another really important one for any individual to follow. So let's just talk a little bit about insurance. There's several different types that are available. So everything from liability aspects, because if you're holding data for people, if you do have a breach, you may be under obligation to provide notifications, so you can get insurance for that. If it's a type of business that you are exposed, you may have to hire a PR firm to help you manage this particular situation. You may have to pay regulatory fees. So all these are covered in different type of insurance options you have available. So you can talk to your business insurance broker to see if you might be a good candidate for something like this. The cyber investigation expense, you may have to hire an expert to come in and do some forensic work as to what happened. So there's a whole different bunch of areas that you might want to consider for your business, and insurance companies do provide that for you. Again, just to make you aware, there's some options on that. Matt, you want to help me out a little bit with some of these password policies that we have out there that we might suggest to people?
Yep, absolutely. So you want to use long, complex passwords, uppercase, lowercase, symbol, number. I would say at least 8 characters. Some of this is driven by the website itself. If I can, I want to do at least 18 personally. Some websites just don't support going that high, but do the best you can. You want different site passwords for each site. Don't use the same one for your Google, for ShareFile, for Dropbox, for all of those things. You want different passwords for each one. You want to make sure that you frequently change those passwords. So at least twice a year, change those passwords. So, at the new year, at July, make sure you go through and you change all of those and update them. Dave mentioned this before, but make sure your auto lock is on for your device. Once you turn that on and set that password for Apple's iOS devices like iPhones, it automatically encrypts that device. There's a similar choice for Android as well, but make sure that when you walk away from your phone or your tablet or your computer, that device is locked. Two-factor authentication. So this is where you have not only a password as one, but you have your phone or some kind of smartwatch or tablet as your second device that will get a text or some kind of code, so that it's something your password, and something you have can cut down on the amount of compromises dramatically. Review your online security settings. A lot of companies like Facebook, Google, a lot of the professional sites will update those quite often. So you want to go in occasionally and just check your settings and make sure it's set to the way you want things shared. And then finally, none of this would be possible for me without a password manager. So we've got an example right here. There's a couple different ones out there like LastPass. I think Dave and I both use 1Password. They work on any device, so you've got it on your computer, you've got it on your phone, on your tablet. I could not remember a different password for every website without some kind of tool like this. So 1Password, which we have here, has military-grade encryption. So you only have one strong password for it, and it remembers everything else, and it gives you the ability to put in notes, other kind of, credit card information, and securely store that so that you have access to it from any device.
Yeah, we often get asked, is this really that secure and is it safe? And the answer is yes. It's certainly much better than what we've seen for a lot of other people, which is the classic, I'm going to write it on a piece of paper. I think it was the unfortunate person who was in Hawaii after one of the events out there. Remember that one, Matt? hear about that guy? He was
No, I don't think I did.
the director of emergency operations. He was being interviewed, and he had his password written on a sticky note on his computer as they were interviewing him.
Oh, lovely.
He caught a lot for that one. So this is much better, much more secure than putting on sticky notes or on a spreadsheet on your computer, for example, which a lot of people do as well. It gives you better access as well. Like I say, I use the word round tripping. You can put it on your computer. You can get it on your mobile device. I can get to it. And it becomes also something, if I share this with my family, personally, they can get access to my stuff as well. Because again, it's so complicated anymore. And as Matt described, I think I have 250 different accounts with different passwords. I'd never remember them all.
No chance.
No chance.
There's also, I mean, we actually offer for our business organizations, there are also tools that can work for the entire organization. So if you want to secure and have two-factor authentication and a password manager for your entire company, there are options for that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things. And this is one of the areas in technology that we're seeing as one of the biggest weak points of security, but also there are steps being taken by a lot of different companies to help improve this for all of us. It's an extra step for sure. And I also just want to add, as the ways to mitigate this is, you know, it's kind of like difficult to finish. If you aren't doing many of these or any of these right now, try just doing some. Graduate to the next level in some of these areas. If you're doing a lot already, just go to the next one. Keep adding to what you're doing. And certainly, if you're not doing but a couple, trying to stack yourself up with all these things at one time is very difficult. So just continue to try to add to your security as you're going forward a little bit at a time. It's the best way to go forward. So one of the other things I want to suggest you check into is a document from the IRS. It's actually the IRS number for this is publication 4557. It's about a 19-page document. It'll help you plan out, map, and improve and understand your risk that you're in right now, but also mitigate it from also some of the things we're suggesting. So if you're, you know, a tax preparer, or if you're a law firm, or anybody that's holding personal information, you know, HIPAA kind of compliance, I think this is a great, easy to get access document. Helps you kind of formulate a personal plan or a business plan to kind of move forward and improve what you're doing. A lot of it's about, you know, how you test, monitor, and revise. A lot of analog things too. We've talked about digital things here too, but, you know, again, we mentioned earlier, shredding information, keeping sure that documents are securely locked up in file folders or in offices and things like that are very critical to all this as well. So good document to read up on, help you continue to go forward and improve your security for your own business, clients, and employees. Check here for any questions we may have.
We did get a question that I answered at the time, but just to share it with everybody. Somebody said that they had clients that they were using that would bring in information that they were using through thumb drives, and they were kind of asking, you know, what to do. I recommended maybe kind of the way Dave described a private banking computer. Same idea. If you have to share data with clients, maybe have a computer that's off the internet, off of your network, kind of segregated, that's just used to do a security scan of those thumb drives before you put them in a machine that's on your network with people that are going to use the files that are on there. Just an extra layer to be safe before you use those thumb drives. And there are also a lot of online portal options for organizations that can be, you know, a little bit easier for people to share information with clients. There are certainly ones that are designed for tax preparers, and then, you know, even the Dropbox and Box and things, tools like that can certainly be secure ways to share information either internally within your organization or externally, and give you the security control to manage that.
Those Dropbox ones or anything out there, Matt and I always encourage everyone to use the paid versions of those programs.
Absolutely.
Provide a lot more greater security than the free versions. I was just a panelist at a recent tax seminar. And I know that the sharing aspect's a big challenge for everyone. I know most people who are tax preparers or even law firms are sharing documents that way now and struggle with clients who continue to share documents in an unsecure manner. And now that came a big conversation of how do you make sure that clients are using these tools. And it's hard. We're back to having people conduct themselves in a proper way. So part of it may have to fall on you as tax preparers or in legal areas to push back on your customers to say, look, I can't even take your documents unless you put them in this secure portal.
Right.
I'm just going to reject it from you and not even have access to it and have to delete it until you to get to that point. And I think it's more of an educational aspect for all of us. And including your clients, understand the proper way to handle private information themselves. They don't think much of it, and you're left being responsible for it in some ways. So you really, unfortunately, have to be responsible yourself and trying to educate them a little bit along the way.
Yeah. You also want to make sure you've got some internal policy for your own organization, just to, if you do have things in place, you must use Dropbox, for example. You must follow this policy. We had an example of a client that had good policy. They had it in place, and they had an employee that unfortunately didn't follow the policy and ended up with a compromise where they lost credit card information, potentially costing the company thousands of dollars. So they were able to take action to mitigate it, but it's educating your employees, having good policy in place, and then following through.
Another question came up, and that's, should we institute a no-click policy? And the answer is yeah. That's a fit for your organization. That may be something to follow. I know that it's just a general rule: don't click on anything. It's our policy in our company. We don't click on anything. And it sounds kind of strong, but it may be appropriate, especially if you're bringing a lot of contractors in for a short period of time, or even just a few, saying, look, if we just have a policy, you can't click on anything.
Well, it's not that unreasonable too. I mean, if I get a request from a bank to take some action, I have the ability to go to my bank website directly, log in with my credentials without clicking on a link in an email. So I know by doing it my way that I have gone, I've gone through the proper channels, I've gone in there, and then I can either, talk to somebody at the bank, or if I don't see what I think that they're asking for on there, then I'm even more suspicious.
Great.
Trust your gut.
I think we're good. I think we're good on all that. Just want to say thank you to everyone for participating with us today. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me at dave@easetech.com. Check out our website. We have a really great blog that provides some information. We have a survey about our program today. We'd love to hear from you. It helps us not only, improve what we're doing here, but create new content as well. And we'd like to do that a couple times a month to update what we're doing, but we really appreciate any feedback you have. Working on recording this. If that all comes together, I'll send you out an email so you can share it with your other employees who may not have attended or anybody else who might think be appropriate for that. One final thing to share with you is we do have a great cloud solution out there. I like to think of it as a turnkey cloud solution where we virtualize your office. And a lot of the things that we discussed here today about how you can increase security, improve your disaster recovery. And a day like today, where many of us in this area are experiencing some inclement weather and are working from home, you can work from anywhere as well. And so you could simply come to your house, log into your desktop that you may have in your office, and get to everything you need securely. And for a lot of us too, the bigger aspect of meeting compliance is becoming more and more important, and our secure cloud solution provides that for you as well. So give me a call, send me an email. I'd love to talk to you more about it if this might be a fit for you. And again, I want to thank everyone for their time today, and thank you very much as well, Matt.
Thank you, Dave.
Have a great one, everybody.
Take care, everybody.